All right, so normally I start by saying today I have an awesome guest on our podcast on Cards to the Moon, but we decided to make this a joint podcast. So really, I'm kind of the guest and the host at the same time with my good hobby friend Denny Cards, who has his own podcast called The Card Diary. So, you know what, without further ado, let's welcome my co-host for this joint, I don't know what to call it, The Card Diary to the Moon, maybe, podcast. So Denny, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Clark, for having me and us. I feel like this is going to be like Face Off with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, where we're just like face off. We're just kind of we're into each other's we're in each
Yes,
other's like bodies, and we're just switching faces.
I love that reference. Love the
Yeah.
movie, so I totally get it. And yeah, for sure. So what we decided on while we were chatting on Instagram before we decided to do this pod was that you know how will we do this, right? And then the
Yeah.
joke was, who's going to interview who? We both have our podcast. Are you going to interview me? Am I going to interview you?
Yeah.
And that reminded me of that Spider-Man meme where we're just
Yes.
kind of pointing at each other.
Yep.
Yeah. So we decided it would just be a free flow of hobby talk, and essentially we'll probably just end up interviewing each other at the end of it. But I don't know, Denny. Do you know where you want to start in terms of what we want to kind of
Yeah,
discuss
we
today?
actually, this is completely unstructured, and that's what's exciting about this. It can go anywhere. So
Mm,
I'm gonna go do a little yes and with what you just said with regards to Spider-Man, because I didn't know you're gonna bring that up.
okay.
Having said that, though, last year when I recorded one of my earlier podcasts before the national, I just hit my first year anniversary with the podcast,
Nice.
and I mean, you guys, kudos to you guys for so many years and so many episodes. You guys are like 10x the number of episodes compared to mine, but I'm very excited for you guys, and
Thank you.
congratulations on all the success. Spider-Man. So I watched Spider-Man. I think it's the second one. I don't know what the first one's called. Maybe Entering the Multiverse. Then it's Across the Multiverse, and then the third one's coming out maybe next year.
Yep.
But I watched the second one with my kids last summer, and I kind of had this idea of how all of us as hobbyists,
Mm,
we are like ourselves are Spider-Man in our own world, Spider-Man and Spider-Woman, and we come to the national, and that's the multiverse where we're all kind of like pointing at each other, like we're the main characters in our own stories, but
yes.
we see everyone else, and we're all having a great time, and we're all, just spider people.
Right.
And so when you said that, that definitely made me think of last year's national when, I mean, it was an absolute fantastic time. I was very sad to miss it this year in Cleveland,
Yep.
which we can certainly talk about. But I am really excited for Rosemont again in 2025. How about you?
Yes, me too. Well, I've. It's funny you mentioned that because the national we're going to be playing. By the time this airs, it's going to be last week. But I
Yeah.
was on our mutual hobby friend Iowa Dave, his
Yes.
podcast called The Shallow End, and I was talking
Yes.
about why I decided to go to Fanatics Fest instead of the national this year.
Hmm.
And part of that reason is it's cost prohibitive. I can't go to both. We both
Hmm.
have families, so that's also a factor. And my wife wouldn't be pleased if I went to both, away from the fam. So I had to choose one. So those are a couple of reasons. But then I've talked to other hobby friends here locally in Toronto where I am, and they also talked about Cleveland not being the greatest venue, and we kind of saw some of those
We definitely
drawbacks as Cleveland,
definitely
in
saw it.
Cleveland,
Right.
um, with the traffic and all that. I don't have to go over that again. But still,
Walking a mile in the plains, like in grassy field,
right? That's
people
that
abandoning their cars like a zombie apocalypse.
that kind of half cured my FOMO seeing
Yeah,
seeing
half
that,
cured. Right.
right?
No,
But I still, yeah,
yeah.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. No, I still had FOMO. That's what I was gonna say because I
Yes.
wanted to be there. But you've been there. You mentioned that, and last year was your first one. Is that right?
No, so last year I said it was going to be my second one. It actually ended up because I forgot about having gone in 2008. It
Oh
would have
wow.
been my third. So,
Okay.
you know, I'm not going to do the whole background because we're interviewing each other or whatever this is. But collected in the early '90s into the late '90s. I stopped,
Yep.
and then I came back in the mid 2000s to the mid 2010s, roughly. So in that young adult period when I had like adult money,
Hmm.
like not a lot of adult money at all, because it's like when you're just out.
Right.
of education. It is. I went to two nationals. One in 2008, where it was in Baltimore when I saw Bill Simmons in the convention center floor.
Oh, nice.
Then 2012, it was also in Baltimore. Again, if I'm wrong about 2008, it's because I don't have any memorabilia or any like things to remember that year by. It's either 2008 or 2009.
Okay.
But then 2012, I went with my father-in-law, and we had a great time at that time too. And then like 4 months later, my first son was born, and I left the hobby. And then I
Mm,
came back 10 years later, which is 2022.
right.
So this year Cleveland would have been my fourth. Last year was my third national.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and that was in Chicago last year.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's easy. It's kind of like DC and Northern Virginia. Like it's easy to say Chicago, but it really is in Rosemont. The big difference being that it is like a suburb of Chicago,
Mm,
where it's just a very kind of like well laid out. A lot of hotels. Everything's in walking distance. Like the steakhouse everyone goes to, Gibson's, like right across the street from the
right.
convention center. See, I'm already like getting amped up for Rosemont. But yeah, Rosemont slash Chicago. It's like saying Arlington slash Washington D.C., or like Westchester County and New York City and Manhattan or
Gotcha.
something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
Yeah.
not directly in Chicago, but having said that, I mentioned this on a previous podcast episode on the Cars to the Moon, but would this be? And I don't know if it's a hobby hot take, but would you have any reservation if the national was only in Rosemont and that's it? Let's just keep it there.
I would not have any reservations, mainly because a lot of people talk about this whole idea of, oh, this place, it has so many fun things to do.
Hmm.
The fun things is the convention.
Right.
I think you may know this with work, or some people listening, but when you go on a work trip, you're there for work. You don't get to see
Mm,
you might go out for dinner one night, you might go out and see a show one night, but that's about it. Like,
right.
you're there for the actual, whatever, the 9 to 5 or whatever you're there for.
Right.
So people can talk about all they want about, oh, this place would have like so much more fun things to do, but the fun thing to do is the cards.
Yes.
So I'm totally okay with it, because logistically, I mean, other than the whole AC issue, all the hotels, the restaurants, they're all nearby.
Hmm.
It's there's no crowd issues. There's no like funneling. There's no long lines. It seemed like the parking thing was a huge issue. It seems like logistically, it was a nightmare for the national this year.
Yeah.
But I'm only using 1 year as a sample data point, but I didn't remember seeing any of that or hearing any of that in Rosemont last year, and that's why my post national, one of my reels I wrote was, it seemed like everyone had a great time and everyone was happy and nothing bad happened. So let's do it again.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And I haven't even been to one national, but everything I've heard from, the collectors that have gone,
Yeah,
if I did a poll right now, it would be overwhelmingly people would want it at Rosemont every year. And
yeah.
then so why not? For the national
Everyone wants
organization.
it. Yeah, everyone wants it close to them, right? I would love if it was in a Washington D.C. convention center,
Right.
but I know parking would be a nightmare. I think hotels would be really expensive. We're going to see how the Javits Center is with
Mm,
Fanatics Fest, which you and I are both going to,
yep.
and we're going to see how they can handle capacity. I have no clue what number of tens of thousands of people they expect out of that time.
Mm,
But having lived in New York City, I don't think I've been to the Javits Center. It's been a really long time, but I grew up there as a kid in Queens, and we'll just see. I mean, I think Fanatics, they'll do their absolute best to make it a fun time, but I don't think even they know
right.
how it's going to turn out.
It's true. True. And yeah, like you said, we'll both be there. I'm really looking forward to it, seeing all of you guys in person.
Yeah,
But yeah, it'll be interesting. We can knock, the logistics of the national, but we have nothing to compare it to yet in terms of, how Fanatics Fest will be like. So that'll
yeah,
be, I'm sure, part of what we see on Instagram when we're all there. If there are any issues, that's certainly going to come up.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, but what did you miss when you mentioned, like we both mentioned that we're getting FOMO with seeing the national coverage and some of our friends going there this year in Cleveland. For you that haven't been there just last year, what did you miss the most? What did it came to your mind when you
I
start seeing
mean,
all that?
you do see the most insane cards you've ever seen in your life in one place. I remember that in '08 and 2012 too. Kind of like, look at these LeBron cards and you look at all this, and I gotta see if I can find that old footage, or because I definitely did not take a lot of video back then. I barely had an iPhone. I
Yeah.
had maybe like a flip, uh, not a flip camera, but like just like a little standalone camera thing that I
Hmm.
brought, but I didn't make content back then. But you do see the most insane cards, and I'm not just talking about the signed Jordan 86 Fleer and all that stuff. I'm just talking, I mean, and like the most expensive, like $6 million mantles and all that. I'm just talking
Right.
about for my own lane, the biggest lane that I collect in with 90s basketball. I'm just like, I remember last year I picked up like a low numbered Gary Payton card where I was like, I've never seen this transact online. I can't even find a
Mm.
comp on it, and we just kind of talk back and forth with the dealer, and we're just doing indirect comps. And I'm like, I'm so glad I have it. I will say I did try to submit it to PSA. It came back as a min holder, meaning didn't meet the required size. I mean, the corners are beautiful, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this really was this trimmed? I don't know,
Oh
but
no.
you see these, and and that card even wasn't even like more than like it wasn't outside my budget. I thought it was an awesome card, but that was just one that came to mind that I was really happy to get that I just didn't see on eBay,
Yeah.
didn't see on any other marketplace. So having said that, you see the cards, but then also, like I've said this so many times, we come for the cards, but we stay for the people. Like
Mm.
all the, I don't even like the word networking because it just seems so business-like, but just meeting people you've talked to online, and these friendships you form and strengthen,
Yep.
and it's like watering a plant. You just kind of give it the nutrients, the oxygen, sunlight, and the water that you feel like it really needs for the friendship to blossom. So
Yeah.
and I couldn't even meet everyone last year. It was just so much, and I was there for like almost the entire week, but it just goes by in a blur.
Right. Yeah. I'm expecting something similar to Fanatics Fest for sure in terms of how fast things will go. But like you already mentioned, that's what I'm looking forward to the most, meeting up with people. And it's like for me, whenever we have guests on the pod, and I'm sure it's the same for you, it's almost effortless to talk about cards because we love it so much, and
Yeah,
we love talking about it. And it's not awkward at all. You know what I mean? Like
no,
we're
it's
virtual
not.
strangers, but when we
Yeah,
start talking about it, it's like, oh, it feels like we've been friends for a while. You know what I mean?
right. It really does. I mean, look. I mean, I'm looking at the record time right now. We're at 13 minutes.
Yeah.
It feels like we've just been talking for a couple of minutes. That's how fast the time
Yes.
goes.
Totally.
But no, I absolutely can't wait to meet you and the gang in New York City. Do you have your lodging already set up?
Yeah, we do. Hyung and I just booked ours. We'll be around the Times Square area, so we could
Okay.
easily walk or take the subway to Javits. So yeah.
When I was a kid, that was a really rough area, and then it started getting better and better and better. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's a wonderful, it's a great place to stay. I will be staying with a friend who is in the Westchester County area, so I'll be taking the
Okay.
Metro North or begging for. I might just might stick a thumb out and try not to get murdered in a car going down. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's about like 45 minutes north, and so I, I have a friend who's not in the hobby, not a hobby friend, a
Yep.
friend from way back when, and they said that I could stay with them, and so that will
Nice.
help a lot with logistics and cost. But
Right.
I'm thinking about taking a Amtrak. I haven't taken a train in forever, probably pre-pandemic.
Okay.
Um, but I'm thinking about doing that. You guys are flying in, right?
We're flying in, so yeah, that's
Yeah,
why and then we don't have to worry about parking either. Uh,
exactly.
so that's going to be a bonus. But you know what? It's funny because I was just in New York a month and a half ago with my family. We just decided to do it as kind of a short vacation.
Nice.
So it's good to be back a couple months later from that trip. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Oh my
great
gosh.
city.
Last year, August. I don't know if anyone knows this because I don't know how much I don't think I've mentioned it, but I was texting with Hyung about Blackpink, right?
Yeah, Young or John? I
Oh
think
my gosh,
John was
John.
yeah
I'm so
John.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like in my head. Yeah, John. John went with his family
that's
to a
right.
Blackpink concert
Yeah, yeah,
in East Rutherford, New Jersey last August.
yeah.
I happened to be there as well. I don't even know how, because I don't even know if I like posted about it on Instagram about being there, but
Yeah.
we ended up knowing that each of us were there. And the craziest thing happened where my family, it had nothing to do with it. It was not an influencer thing, but
Hmm.
my wife came as I was at, we were in two separate concession lines for our boys, and she comes up to me and she goes, you got to get our stuff from our seats. We just got upgraded, and this really nice, um, giant stadium
Yeah.
worker attendee was like, I have the ability to upgrade some people, and we want to upgrade you. So we bought the cheap seats,
Hmm.
which were not cheap because it's Blackpink, but we bought the cheap seats. But we ended up being like in the floor level, like the pink pit or whatever it was called.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, John, find this lady. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you just have to come to my area. And
Yeah.
then, he was like, no, we're just gonna stay here. And he was like, I was like, John, like, I don't even know what's going on. And it was pandemonium. But
Yes. I can imagine.
I didn't get to meet up with him. But yeah, I very much look forward to meeting all of you.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure John can make it. Funny
No,
enough,
he's not.
but Hyung and I will be there for sure. So we'll definitely meet
Okay.
up and have a good time for sure.
Who is it that someone was like, we should have a spin-off podcast with me and John, right?
And no, our friend Will, who,
Will. Oh my gosh, I'm
yes,
getting it wrong mixed up. I forget who made that recommendation, but someone was like, yeah, Will and
it,
Denny would make
yes,
for a
I feel like it would have
ridiculous.
been Hyung because you guys have like the same sense of humor, demeanor, and when you talk about the hobby, it's just hilarious.
Yeah,
So
no, he's a funny
double the
guy.
fun.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, of course, you've heard him as a guest on the pod too. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
uh,
He's funny. I love his deadpan. I remember one of the first things I heard him talk about was like Beckett's grading standards, and I was just cracking up. And I love that, just as a tangent, like when you were on Iowa Dave's podcast, and
yeah.
I happened to stumble upon it. I love seeing my hobby friends kind of like do things together, and
Hmm.
that's what I hope people feel when they, listen to this one.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? That's kind of what I want to do while we're in New York City because a lot of us I know who are hobby friends will be in one place. So why not just like talk about sports cards and, just geek out over that. So that's kind
Yes,
of
and
my
we
hope
got to
too.
go to K Town, 34th Street,
Yes,
little Koreatown, get some Korean barbecue and all that.
absolutely. That's a
Yeah,
given.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's I don't know what else. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the national, just end
Oh, yeah, I was
it.
gonna say, are we done with the call? Um, I wanted to briefly talk about how, if we can talk about how we scratched that national itch. Like, were you stocking cards more on eBay, or were you kind of like, maybe just trying to see if you can make some Instagram story deals?
Yeah.
For me, I got to set up as a dealer at a local-ish card show. So
Hmm.
I live in Northern Virginia, a suburb of Washington D.C., and
Yep.
not 4 miles, geez, 4 hours south, there is Greenville, North Carolina, just past the North Carolina border.
Hmm.
And I had a friend who saw that I was lamenting that I may be missing national, and they were like, "Hey, just want to let you know if you want to come to the show, I'm setting up and all this stuff." And we just talked on the phone. We were DMing, and sometimes just DMing isn't, I was like, we're just DMing too much. Let's just, get on the horn. Let's talk.
Right.
And then he kind of convinced me in a way. He influenced me that maybe it would be fun to do, and it completely blew my already not like super high expectations, but it definitely exceeded my expectations because I was told it was gonna be like a 75 card show. It's baseball heavy, which I'm not very much into. And, I know I have inventory. I know I have cards I want to sell, and I'm just sitting on it because I'm a collector. I just sit on my cards, and the value just keeps dropping for some of them.
Right.
And I was like, I want to just scratch the itch. So it's, I think I said this to you before we recorded, but it's kind of like your friends are going to Atlantic City or Vegas,
Hmm.
and you can't go, but you are able to go to like a local card game in your area, right? It's
Right.
kind of like you couldn't play poker at the Borgata, so you're playing poker at
Yeah.
John's house. But it felt really good. Like I felt I had a blast. I mean,
Nice.
whether I made, I didn't do like, it wasn't like a incredibly successful show for me in terms of selling, but in
Okay.
terms of getting to meet a new group of people in a new area, it was my first card show where I did an overnight, where like I had hotel expenses to try to recoup and all that.
Mm.
But yeah, it was just a really fun show, and I did do decently well, and so I feel like I got my fix that way. So having said that, I did not buy anything on eBay, although I did have some way too many cards on my watch list, I'll say.
Well, I saw some of those IG stories that you put up, and it looks like you had a
Yeah.
good time. You know, all the transactions you made, so it seems
Yeah, no,
successful.
I made about like 2 dozen transactions, which is crazy. But a lot of them, not a lot of them, but like there were some that were like part cash, part trade. Some of them were
Right.
that were just trade. But it was just kind of fun to kind of say goodbye to some cards that didn't have as much meaning to me,
Hmm.
and getting in some cards that you were either liquid or that I did want a PC.
Yeah.
So I felt like I again got that itch by just transacting with
Nice.
people. So, um, can I ask you, because I saw so many downtowns and kabooms, and it seems like that's where a lot of the ultra modern hobbies going towards the case
Yeah.
hits. Um, Two questions. One, what is the baseball equivalent of a non-numbered case hit, like a downtown or a kaboom? Because I
Hmm.
can't think of one other than, I guess, baseball Panini unlicensed downtowns and
Yeah.
kabooms. By the way, I saw Mickey Mantle kaboom, and I'm like, what is this? This is disgusting.
Yeah.
Absolutely
That
disgusting,
does
and not
look.
in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Good.
then I'll ask the second question after that.
Okay. Good question. I started collecting the Topps Home Field Advantage cards that was released a
Okay.
couple years ago,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, because it was a blatant knockoff of the downtown cards,
Yeah.
except it was licensed being Topps, right? So you
Yeah.
got essentially, I'm like, oh, these are like licensed downtownish case hits, and so I actually, longtime listeners of our pod will know, I got all the 30 cards
Nice.
in the subset, so that was a fun set to do. So that kind of reminded me of the downtown.
Yeah, but they don't sell for as much, right? I mean, they
So
are case hits.
yes, that's my second point. It's still like on average maybe $10 per. And I'm like, I think the problem is that they are case hits, but there's still so many produced, right? In terms of the top series one and series two and update. There's
I
just so
mean,
many. Yeah.
couldn't you say the same thing about Panini downtowns and kabooms? They produce so many cases that there's a lot flown out there. I mean, I
True.
don't know. It's wild to me how the market dictates. Like, why isn't a home field advantage, 100, at least $100? How's it $10?
I'm still asking that question because that's why I start collecting. I'm like, oh, this is genius move in terms of investing. And then a couple years later, still 10, 15
Yeah,
bucks, you
even like a
know?
Desmond Ritter downtown, and we know that he's gone way down in value. Like his downtowns are like some of the cheapest or whatever, and or Malik Willis Kaboom, and even those are like a couple $100 raw. So
Yeah. The only thing I
it's
could
wild.
really like say to that, maybe my theory is that there's enough of a history of Panini downtown cards that
Mm,
people, want to collect them, right?
I
So
guess
so maybe it's on the demand side. It's higher for Panini downtown than,
maybe, yeah.
the
I
Topps
mean,
home field
and then
advantage.
like in basketball, the Panini 1-and-1 downtowns are like thousands of dollars,
Right.
and they're really coveted and they're really hard to get. Again, because it's not like top series one, right? It's like the not complete
Mm,
opposite end of the spectrum, but it's definitely on opposite sides of the
yeah.
financial cost spectrum. And I think that I mean, there are definitely some cards where I'm just like, I don't think I'll be getting one anytime soon.
Mm,
But it is kind of cool to get these case hits. But before I get to my second question, I'm really, really, really concerned, and I don't know yet. And I almost it's almost like ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know, but I do feel like possibly one of the downtowns that I transacted for could be a fake, like a custom
ooh,
card. And so I told my friend who was like, "Yeah, how'd you do?" I was like, from a monetary, like it was fun, great meeting people, but from a monetary standpoint, I feel like I will have done well if every downtown I got was real,
mm.
and I will have really screwed myself if every single one is fake.
Oh shoot. You got more than one downtown? And
I did transact for more than one downtown, and I transacted my real downtowns, the ones that I know that I had were
no,
real.
yeah,
And I'm like, wait a minute, is like so the ignorance is bliss part is I still do not know how to differentiate the two. I
hmm
know that there's typeset on the bottom of the cards that are either in the center or they're on the bottom left, bottom center or bottom left,
yeah,
but that depends on the year. And I told my friend, like, why would if this is going to be a knockoff, why wouldn't they do an exact facsimile of the back? Like, why do the typeset off to the side, right?
yeah,
So it seems like, again, I don't know all the information, but like Absolute versus Donruss Optic versus 2022 and 2023,
hmm
they all have different um, placements for their logo on the bottom of the back of the card.
yeah,
And then I'm like, okay, how do you figure out, like, is it the wrong Pantone of yellow for the Panini logo?
hmm
Is, it's almost like that 86 Fleer Jordan. Like, are you supposed to look for that little arrow pointing out? And like, what
right,
am I supposed to look for?
it's hard.
I know one thing that I've been told is you can tell if you feel the card. If it feels like a sticker, you're like pretty much screwed.
Yeah,
But a lot of these people, they walk around with these encased, oh, a breaker encased it,
right,
and it's like, oh, I got it. I got it in a break,
hmm
and it's like, I don't think it's rude to ask, but I think definitely next time I'll have to ask, hey, can I take it out of the encased? Can I take the sticker off and see the
yeah,
card? Because it's really easy, and especially with like a CJ Stroud downtown.
yeah,
I mean, I can't even imagine how many were floating around in a national where people were, because you could buy them on Etsy, and I'm not,
don't
this is
trust
not
it.
a primer on how to scam the hobby, but
Yeah,
I've seen people talk about this stuff and it's scary. It really
for
is,
sure.
because these are not numbered. These are
Yeah,
case hits, several $100s. We know the hobby loves to transact in cash,
hmm
so it's untraceable, right?
yeah,
In card shows, I
you have to be
mean,
careful. Yeah,
geez, I
well,
mean,
I mean, that brings an interesting question. For with that experience, does that make you less, you know, or does that make you want to buy raw cards less, or at least just stick to graded cards?
yeah, it makes me want to collect home field advantage.
Right? Well, I mean, you can still get them. I bought all of them raw, but yeah, like
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's just the lower stakes and lower stress. But yeah,
right,
it definitely gives me pause, right? I'm like, why is, even if something isn't fake and it's raw, it does make you wonder, because some people want to transact real quick. You have some people who are slow. 'Cause I'll admit I'm a slow dealer,
hmm
because I don't like to rush into things, and some people are just really quick with the numbers, and they just want to make quick deals to keep it moving. But I mean, you got to look over a card in bad lighting in a large convention or in a
right,
large hotel ballroom.
yeah,
Like, I mean, how can you tell, if there's a print line or if there's a dinged edge or corner? It's just really hard, especially if you don't take it out of the encased one touch.
yeah,
So, uh, I'm very reticent. I mean, it's like a lesson learned, right? If I get screwed on it, I'm not going to pass it along to another person. I'll take it on the chin, and
mm,
it'll be a learning lesson. And I'll definitely make content out of it.
yeah,
That'll be my, silver lining. But it definitely was my almost like, wait, even if they aren't fake, it definitely makes me more kind of like, okay, uh, it's a learning lesson, I think, for sure.
yeah. And like I usually say, if it's too good to be true in terms of a deal, then red flag should go up. So I'm wondering, you don't have to say how much you paid, but did you get a really good deal on it, or was it fair? And then you didn't think that it would be fake.
It's really interesting. I think I got good deals, but then like what you almost have to figure out, and this is no disrespect to the people I transact with, but you
hmm
have to figure out, is this person really desperate for cash and wanting to
Mm,
liquidate,
right.
or are they scamming, or
Yeah.
are they just not knowledgeable with their numbers?
Mm,
The people who I talk to, I mean, some of them are kids, and I'm like, are they cooking? Right? They're cooking me.
right.
But I did wonder. It's almost like you have to assess people, right? Like, you have to figure out, is
Yeah.
this person lying? Is this person telling the truth?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I feel like I got decent deals, but not like liquidation bargain discount, like
Okay.
50% of comps, but
Right.
like, what's the difference between 65, 70, 75% of comps? I mean, after eBay fees, you don't want to pay more than 85% of comps, especially if you're a dealer. Or, I
Fair
mean,
point.
some dealers do, but, if it's not a PC card,
Yeah.
and you just want it for liquidity, I will say, I mean, because I know you're not hockey, but, you have some listeners
Hmm.
in who like hockey because by virtue of being Canadian,
Yeah.
I did my first ever Connor Bedard Young Guns PSA 10.
I saw
That
that.
was easy because that was a PSA,
Yeah. Slapped card.
slats card. It wasn't like raw, but the very same person who I transact with the downtowns, or one of the people, um, we almost did like a first deal of the with the Young Guns, and then we went on to the other cards, kind of like a little tester deal, which is kind of funny because it's like $1,000 card or whatever. But we
Right.
did like a trade, part cash, part trade, where I added cash. I think I definitely spent more than I wanted to as a dealer, but
Okay.
there were just some really good cards out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this person gave me, yeah, I'm not like embarrassed to say or whatever, but I gave them a decent card for their PC because they told me that they collected the Packers and I had Christian Watson
Hmm.
RPA, and I gave him money to make him around 80 to 85%, which maybe 75 to 80%
Okay.
of the value of the Young Guns Connor Bedard, if we're saying it's $1,000. So I gave him
Right.
about 800, about $800 in total value.
Okay. Yeah. So that sounds reasonable. So, but yeah, I think it reminded me while you're talking. We had our friend Daryl on the show, and he deals with much higher end cards, like
Oh yes,
vintage
I
Babe
saw his
Ruth.
Instagram.
Yes, right. So, and when you're at that level, he mentioned relationships are really important. Like, have you dealt with them in the past? Are they credible?
Yeah,
And that, and it's harder to do when you're a dealer and you're just meeting new people, like you
yeah,
you were. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
you
It
can really
is
judge their character on the first 2 minutes of meeting them. It's really difficult to do, I can imagine.
absolutely. Yeah, shout out to Daryl. He definitely DM'd me several times, just being like, "Are you coming, or are you sure you're not coming?" And I was like, "I feel so bad. Like, I want to see everyone."
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for reaching out and just making sure I was okay. And I hope he's listening while driving to his fun, the job that pays the bills, so he can uh,
Yeah.
dabble in that, 5-figure cards and all the craziness that he does.
Yeah.
But having said that, I I was the new guy in an established local card show circuit in North Carolina. It was my
Mm.
first time traveling south of the Virginia North Carolina border to set up as a in that card show in that area. I knew a couple of people beforehand. Of course, one of the people who told me about the show, he lived in the DC area, and he could attest to how much fun it could be.
Hmm.
And yet, because I was a new guy, I think a lot of people gravitated towards my table, wanting to test me out a little bit and see,
Mm.
because I had cards they hadn't seen, right? Because if you're in the same local card show circuit, everyone knows their inventory,
Right.
especially the cards that just don't move. They're like, oh, that again, that same row of cards.
Right. Right.
Bill, you're not moving that. It's been a year since you've had those cards. Um, but I had people coming, and then once I made some purchases from the public,
Hmm.
other dealers, word got around the room, and other dealers would come to my table to be
Wow.
like, "Hey, I heard you're interested in
Yeah.
basketball, so hey, I got this Halliburton silver auto," and I was like, "I don't have to come to your table," but then at that point, I don't have table equity because he's a dealer,
Yeah.
so we did a pretty straight up swap for like football for basketball,
Okay.
but a lot of people would just come up to me, and then I was like, wait a minute, I feel like some of these people are just kind of like trying to put one over me, and so I wasn't getting a good feeling.
Right.
And but it really, you I'm the person who, because I'm new, had to absorb all of everyone else's energy and character and personalities and remember all their names. All they had to do was remember my one name, right?
Right.
But
Interesting.
I had to remember everyone's. But so it was like sensory overload. But talk about being in the hobby for an escape and for being here to meet people and to do something that's completely outside of your normal 9 to 5 and your normal daily routines, it was like an adventure. It was so much fun.
Nice. Yeah. No, for sure. I can see that. Yeah. I don't know if I could. First, I don't have the inventory to be a dealer. I liquidated a lot of stuff when everything was crashing in the last couple of years.
Yeah, the Lucas Silver.
Luke, oh, don't remind me.
I'm sorry.
50% comps.
Oh gosh.
But that's part of the game. You got to know when to cut loose, right?
Yeah.
And I'm at the point where now, like when I go to Fanatics Fest or any local show, I'm always looking to buy now because I want to kind of pick up more cards, and that's the fun part of the hobby for me, just to build up that collection again.
Yeah.
But going back to your original question, how I scratch my itch.
Yes, yes.
I kind of you kind of mentioned it too. I have a lot of cards on my eBay watch list, and I bid on a few of those. I didn't win any of them, so it's like a double whammy. I couldn't scratch my itch, but I tried, and that's fine. More money to spend at Fanatics Fest in New York in a few weeks. But yeah, I think it's I I feel foolish for saying this, but I'm like, I'm definitely want to go to the national in Chicago next year, and I feel foolish because I made this grand statement at the beginning of 2024. I'm going to my first national, and then I retracted that statement after the Fanatics Fest announcement came a couple months later. So I will try my best.
I remember listening to that.
And Iowa date.
Yeah, I remember listening to that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like people, especially when you put your voice out there and you say things, I know it's easy for people to be like, well, you said this one day and now you're contradicting the other. But like, we're human, we're complex, we change minds, we change, scenario change. I mean, just look at me. Like I literally thought I was going to be, and this wasn't supposed to be a segue to what we may talk about, but I was supposed to be an Asian American ambassador for the national, and I was planning to go.
Yeah.
It was all set in place. And then the week leading up to it, I just felt like the rug was pulled underneath me. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be going now. I'm just not sure. It's not because they were going to pay for lodging and they're going to pay for driving or airfare or anything like that. It was more like, as a human being, I feel hurt. I have a bruised ego now. And so for you, I'm not saying you had a bruised ego, but things change with family obligations. And because, we keep saying the hobby is an escape, but how many of us is this like, we can't stop thinking about the hobby. It's not an escape.
Yes. That's an excellent point, and I think that's a great segue because I do want to kind of talk about that. And for me, when I knew that I wasn't going to go to national this year, I firmly decided to go to Fanatics Fest instead. I was just open about it. In one of our later podcast episodes, I was just accountable for it. I'm like, here's why I'm not going, and just made it a full episode. And in the same way, I think you did a great job. I don't feel like you had to, but you mentioned bruised ego, something you wrote about in your Instagram story, and just how your thought process was, and that's what one of the things I admire about you, Denny. Like you put it out there, definitely more than I do, and I know that people appreciate you speaking your mind and just how you're processing as you're in the moment too. It's not like you had a lot of time to think about it, and you're getting a lot of DMs. I'm sure a lot of comments are pinging your phone. I'm sure, and then just the fact that you cleared the air and you're accountable. Like I think people appreciate that, and to your point, we're human. We change our minds, and we have complex emotions about even things within the hobby. So I just wanted to say that to you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think most people appreciate it. I think some people don't. I think some people, I have my detractors. I have some people who say I'm dramatic, or you're it's just like so unnecessary, or everything's political, everything's politicized. I mean, for me, even if I have become a little bit bigger in the hobby and I have a bigger profile, a bigger platform, or a bigger microphone, whatever it is, it always comes down to, and maybe I should think more, I'll admit that, but I love it. I have a passion for the hobby. I love the cards. I love the people, even the people who don't like me, or, maybe I didn't like them for a little bit. Like I'm trying to make amends. And I just don't want, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve, inside and outside of the hobby.
Hmm.
It's something that I could certainly work on, but that's me. Like I love sharing my. That's what social media is, right? People sharing their
Yeah.
lives. There was a time when I felt kind of not like creatively stunted, but I felt a lot of pressure. I mean, maybe, I won't talk about it too much, but just to briefly mention, I did leave the hobby for almost 3 months.
Hmm.
And it's because, well, I won't go into all the reasons, but one of the hobby reasons was I just felt like I was sprinting a marathon. I just felt burnt out.
Yeah.
And I just felt like things I was doing, maybe if they landed or didn't, I was just trying too hard to derive. I just felt creatively like blah,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh man. And so um I think whenever I stick to my gut and my heart, and I just wear my heart on my sleeves, and I show my real self,
Hmm.
there's a good amount of people who do appreciate it. And it's, people are like, oh, you're so organic, you're so genuine. And it's like, i'm just I'm just doing what I love doing, and I just show it. I just, if I'm full of drama, it's because things happen to me, and I happen to
Right.
show it on social media.
Yes.
And so when the national approached me, and I won't go into all the private conversations I had with Ray, because I really like Ray Schulte. And
Hmm.
if he's listening to this, shout out to you, sir. I really respect you and admire what you're doing. But you know, I didn't reach out to the national asking to be an ambassador.
Yeah.
I tagged the national on something funny, something. It was like the TSA thing about just
Right.
having
Right. I
going
remember
through
that.
TSA screening.
Yeah.
And I was reached out to say, hey, let's talk. And so we ended up having I thought was a fantastic conversation.
Hmm.
And an offer was made, and I accepted it and said, email this person and then follow up. And then a week later, I followed up, and it was, we no longer are going that direction. And I was like,
Mm.
I respect that. I understand that. Can I please ask why?
Yeah.
And I think when people don't feel heard or listened to, they can lash out. And that's what I did.
Hmm.
When I didn't get a response, maybe I could have waited longer, but as we know in the hobby, things happen so quick, and social media makes everything into a pressure cooker. i
Yeah.
i kind of just i I will admit, I kind of lost my mind. I was angry, I was upset, I was bitter.
Mm.
I was like, not that I thought it was owed to me, and even an explanation I don't think is owed to me, but my way of processing it was to just kind of put it out there that this is what happened.
Yeah.
Because I was really excited. I was ready to. I had a post ready to go. I'm going to be the first Asian American ambassador to the national, and it just all fell apart. And I didn't know why, because all I did was follow up a week later,
Hmm.
being like, "Hey, can I please ask what's going on?" And I got crickets. So, or I got a
Mm.
no and then crickets.
Yeah.
And I just put that all on display on Instagram, and I know it wrinkled a lot of people's feathers, and a lot of people started coming at me publicly and privately. But I also had a lot of supporters, which I really appreciate,
Yeah.
because anytime I do something where there are detractors, it's like 10 times more supporters. So there's always going to be detractors, because it's the internet, it's social
100%.
media.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated the support. And by the way, I can't remember the last time I was on this show, or I guess it's a co-show, but your podcast, I've been on. I can't remember the exact number, but I've been on more than a handful, like more than 5 hobby podcasts, and I got the most positive responses from your listeners than
Oh, amazing.
all of the other ones combined. So I
Awesome.
got to say, you guys do have great reach. You guys have great listener base. You guys are just steady, and I really appreciate what you guys do for the hobby. And I just thank you for agreeing to do this one where we're going to release it together.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's this is so much fun. This is like totally the highlight of my hobby week.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. And I wasn't fishing for that at all, but thank you so much. And you know what? Like part of the guests I've tended to gravitate towards for this podcast are other content creators, because I feel like we have a kinship creating
Mhm.
content, and we know what it is to have detractors. Even I feel like our basic non-controversial show, we report on the hobby news, we talk about our 2 cents on the topic. even we have detractors, like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what you're talking about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't even know who I am, right?
No.
And you listen to 10 seconds of our podcast, and
Yeah.
then yet they have something to comment about.
Totally.
I usually just keep it in, and I'm just saying that's part of my thought process, but I don't give it um, too much thought, and I think that's something I had to really practice over time. I don't know if it's because as a journalist, as a former
Yeah.
journalist,
Yeah.
you never get anyone calling you saying, "Hey, great story." I only get calls saying, what are you writing about?" I don't
Yeah.
agree with this and that and this and that. That's just human nature. And what
Right.
else is human nature is us having a tendency, any content creator, whether you're a journalist or whether you're a hobby content creator, human nature is to focus so much on the negative. And
Mm-hmm.
and I've really really practiced like kind of I read it, I take it as feedback if there is any good feedback from it. But if it's unwarranted, then I go on to the next. And I like to focus on the more positive. But even then, I don't like to really dwell on all that. Like I just really appreciate the work that we put into producing content, and we just hope that most of you guys like it, and that's what makes it fun. And I think I appreciate it too when you came back and it was even Hyung and I off the air and John, we noticed your absence, because
Oh,
you're going so hard, and
yeah.
we're like so happy for you. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, can I be honest? I was like, I don't know if that's sustainable because
Yeah. It wasn't. It's not.
because like the one, and then we talked about this in a previous podcast when you were on, but it really does help having co-hosts and people to do it with,
Yes.
because we kind of carry the burden a little bit at
Yeah.
different times. Some of us are like John. He's away. He has 3 kids, so the summer is really busy. And you'll notice anyone that listens to our podcast, it's Hyung and I most of the time. But that's fine. We like to carry
Yeah.
that load while he
Right.
has family duties
Right.
and things like that. So it helps. But I can only imagine, like, for your like yourself being a solo creator mostly. That's an extra level of challenge I can't even comprehend. So I certainly want to emphasize more on that front. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that because I do think that there is a big difference between kind of like not just solo creators, but like, because even though you guys are a team, there's, you guys are together, but it's not like you guys are a corporation. Like I think
Mm,
there's a difference between content creators where there's the individual, there's the small teams, and then there's like the company or corporation social media teams and digital marketing and these people who know how to do Adobe Final Cut and all this stuff.
right, right.
I do everything on CapCut on my phone. I have a $6 a month subscription. I
Mm-hmm.
do pay for a StreamYard $20 a month, which I probably should stop doing because I'm not monetizing my podcast at all. So I should probably not hang it up, but like just do the free version of StreamYard, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. But there are just things that I do it because I love it. Like it's almost like, to me, it's not like a business expense. It's like I derive so much creative energy and fun from making my reels. Some people are like, you got to monetize, you got to capture lightning in a bottle, you got to like do this, you got to go break, you got to go do this, you got to do that. And I'm like, sounds like a lot of work, and
Right.
I don't want to do more work. I want
Yes.
it to be fun. So yeah, I know in this attention economy that we have, I'm not living on the poverty line, but I'm also not like a millionaire. But I love my comfortable life in the attention economy
Mm-hmm.
in hobby social media.
Yeah.
And that's why I've said in the past, it's okay if I don't grow a lot more. It really, I mean, sure, it'll make some more people laugh, but this can get overwhelming. It
For
really
sure.
can. It can get really tiring. I'm not a person who says like, screw all the haters. I do think that some people can have legitimate kind of like constructive feedback. They just don't know how to say it in a nice way.
Right.
But I also have to temper that with, is the person talking to me qualified? Like everyone can have an opinion, but how strong of how much weight should this opinion carry, right?
Yeah. For
So
sure.
like the most important people are my closest, like friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the hobby, it's like a fellow creator who's in the trenches. So
Yep.
if it's someone who's not a creator, I'm just like, you don't even know how long it took me to make that reel.
Yeah.
Whereas another fellow creator will be like, man, that was some really good editing.
Yeah.
And I show the love too. It's not me trying to gas people up or like,
Mhm.
just kind of like, I think the kids say glaze, you're glazing him or whatever, but it's more like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm I'm a middle-aged guy. Like I'm having fun and I appreciate when I see something cool, I go, "Hey, good job." Like, and I know some of the younger creators, I mean, they have all the energy in the world, but some of them appreciate when I give them a little bit of kudos, and
Yeah.
I think we all need to kind of like help lift each other up.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And going back to what you're saying about younger creators, and you know, there's an audience for like everyone. Every content creator. We don't have to compete for this. Always for the same people. And it's fine. Like I don't. I'm a middle aged guy too, and I know there are certain lanes I just I'm better at. And staying in,
Yeah,
and I try to go um, with stay within that. But like I also want to talk about what you mentioned. Even when you're going through the whole thing, the backlash about how you're feeling with the whole ambassador, and one thing that came out of that discussion was some people accusing you of race baiting, and which I thought was silly, but I thought it was a good conversation to have. Nature Loves You posted something really great about that. That like, and I thought he had some great points
yeah,
that came out of that video that he created. But you want to talk about that, like in terms of
sure.
representation in the
Yeah,
hobby.
shout out to TJ for making that. I didn't know he was going to, and I know it definitely. Some people are like, "Well, why are you talking about this when you're rising up and you just keep your head low?" And it's like, how many times have Asian Americans been told to keep our heads low, right? It's like we're always told the hammer, the highest nail gets hammered down and this and that.
Yeah.
I maybe I am, even though I was born in Korea, maybe I'm more American than Asian at this point, but like I don't mind being outspoken because in the end, like we only have such a short amount of time here and we just have to make the most of it. And
Yeah.
I don't want to uh, kind of like live my life feeling like I was never heard or I never tried. So I always try and always speak out. And I always speak up for other people too. And I know I'm speaking out for women in the hobby. I've gotten backlash for that. And I was
Mm.
told, why are you glazing them? Or why are you like, being a white knight and all this stuff? And I'm like, I'm just trying to be an ally. And then some women in the hobby are like, don't use that word, ally. We don't like that word. I'm like, well, you also don't speak for
Right.
all women. So I, despite all that, I'll always speak up and speak out,
Mm.
even if it's not corporate safe. And I know TJ, he is getting more kind of like into the hobby with kind of like monetizing his content, which I'm really happy for. And he did stick his neck out more than I did because I'm not monetizing my content
Mm.
right now. So I really appreciated his support in talking the way he did, and it was straight from the heart. For me, representation matters. Not yeah, I wasn't race baiting. I mean, this is my life, right? Like I was hurt by something happened. I reacted in a childish way, and then I owned up to it. And I
Yeah.
just I that all played out online. It wasn't a way to like I thought it might get some attention. I definitely was in the wrong when I said there was no Asian American because I did not know Mary Gamble. Gamble was half Chinese. And then right after my post, I think she collects, or not she collects, somewhat miss collects. I don't know. I'm sorry, but another Korean was selected, which is I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's representation is important because we in any space that is purporting to be inclusive, you
Mm.
have to see the inclusivity, not just talk about the inclusivity. It
Agreed.
has to manifest itself in the actual visual, like, optics matter type of way. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why it was important for me that even if it wasn't me, that it be someone else
Yeah.
that looks like me because I want to feel like this is a good, inclusive place. I want this, corny as it sounds, I want this to be a good, inclusive place for my kids as they get into hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to be able to look at on social media, which I don't let them watch social media because they're too young, but I want them to be able to say, hey, there are these creators you know, who look like me, who have fun and show how much passion they have. And that's how we don't just talk about inclusivity, but we actually have it.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And man, like in our podcast and even on my channels, I don't really talk about race, but
Hmm.
obviously from our social media clips promoting our podcast, you'll see that hey, the three hosts of the Cards to the Moon, we're all Korean or we're all Asian, and then just kind of putting ourselves out there, I think hopefully shows that hey, there's more um, ethnic diversity within the hobby, right? And one of the things I thought about during this whole discussion is I think it's fair to ask for more representation in the hobby when there are plenty of, content creators with different racial backgrounds. If there was
Yes.
only one or two, if there's only token Asian or token black content
Hmm.
creator, I'm not going to argue for diversity, because
Right.
it's not fair representation or it's not proportional. But the fact is, look on social media. There's increasingly more and more content creators that have different racial backgrounds, and I think that's important to acknowledge. And I think the people that say, said about your, national ambassadorship being taken away from you, and it's just a status. It's not really about the status at all. It's just a simple acknowledgement, right, that the hobby is growing because there are
Hmm.
more increasing diversity in the hobby. And like you mentioned already, it welcomes collectors of all different kinds of backgrounds. And you see it when there's that acknowledgement. And that's all I think, that's the key, I think, of this whole thing. And I
Yeah.
don't know if people see that still.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's the acknowledgement, it's being heard, it's feeling like you're seen. Those are such important things, and it's just my opinion. It's not a fact, but it's
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, and maybe objectively, a lot of people would agree with me. And it takes nothing away from other races and minority statuses and all that stuff. But my strong opinion is some of the very best in the hobby space in all walks of content creation, and they're crushing it.
Yep.
Like I talked about you guys. You guys are one of the best hobby podcasts because the numbers don't lie. We've talked about the numbers a little bit because I'm like this little train that's I'm just kind of only the one man pumping the air and the coal and the and the fire for the little engine. But you guys have been doing it together, and you guys are just crushing it. Nature is a great content creator for short form.
Mm-hmm.
We got people who like Arena Club. People always wondered why am I so doing things at Arena Club. The owner is Korean American.
Yeah.
And we had some decent talks, and I want to see him do well. We have other Black Jade. The reason I'm saying all these names is because I didn't put it in my post. I don't want to post them so that they felt like included, but also kind of like pointed out.
Right.
But I'll give them their flowers on this podcast because it's a co-hosted podcast.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Black Jaded Wolf is considered one of the best high-end
OG.
dealers.
Yeah.
Sharon, she's crushing it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have what did I miss? Like podcasters, company owners, dealers, um, short form, long form. I know a lot of people got upset that I didn't mention Pac-Man. Pac-Man, as far as I knew, was not an ambassador for the national,
Yeah.
so I didn't like include that part of things. But he's like one of the biggest YouTubers, right?
Yes,
Long
sir.
form,
Yeah.
and so it takes it away from no one to say my opinion, which is that we as a very large, because we're not a monolith, right? Asian
Mm-hmm.
Americans are not a monolith, like we're just this one country. But for all of the great content that's out there for people to enjoy for free,
Mm-hmm.
we're crushing it. We are. So
Yep.
how
Agreed.
could we not have a seat at the table, the figurative or literal table?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad we talked about it. And like that reminds me of the conversation I had with Mama Breaks, Stephanie, who was on our pod,
Hmm.
and it's funny. I didn't really bring up the whole issue of a woman in the hobby because she doesn't really talk about that. I really
Hmm.
for when I have guests on the podcast, I really want to talk about what they're into. And
Yeah.
she's into breaking. Obviously, that's her main thing in the hobby. But she's big into she was talking about bilingual breaks, doing
Yeah, I
in
heard about
different
that.
languages, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into just more diversity. Like it's not just even within our own country. Hobby Korea. They sent a team to the national this year.
They
You
did.
know, and it's growing internationally, and that's only good for the hobby. You know, and you know we always joke about what does 10xing the hobby mean, but that's got to be part of it. International growth, more diversity in the hobby has to be part of it for us to 10x anything, especially within the
Yeah.
hobby.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I think I said that on my post. The only way we 10x this is by all doing it together and rowing together. I saw Hobby Korea when I went to Korea 2 years ago.
Mm,
I didn't make any content at all because I wasn't making content. I was like, I barely knew how to. I didn't have CapCut. I didn't, I was
right.
barely doing any content, but I was still taking pictures of my cards on the floor. I literally. Um, I talked to some people over there at that time, and I talked about, hey, do you guys do whatnot? Do you guys get into breaks? And they're like, we're not able to do whatnot. And the only breaks we do are like in person. Like it's almost like the old school pre-internet days
Right.
of like, you got to get together with people, pool your money. No one makes money on it.
Hmm.
No one is monetizing, no one's getting a cut of the break. You just put in the equal amount, divide up the teams or the divisions, however you want.
Yeah.
And then you just open up cards that you weren't able to. Um, I don't want to get into this too much, but both of us being Korean, like we know about that concept called ge, which is like Korean small businesses and families pool money
Mm,
every month on a small amount of money, and then every month one person gets all that money, and it's not gambling. It's almost like a quote unquote investment strategy, which
right.
is kind of not good because you could have people leave abruptly or move.
Yeah, right.
But so it's not great, but like, that's what our parents did and our grandparents did. And
Mm,
so people pool money so that they can afford to get that big freezer for their small business or whatever it was. But there is that collectivism, in the purest sense of breaking, it's supposed to be able to afford more expensive product by putting in small amounts,
yeah.
but then that's become completely bastardized by capitalism. I don't want to sound like socialist, but people are like, well, oh
I
yeah, I'll
get it.
break for you, but I need my 20% cut. Like, I
Right,
need to
right.
make margin. And it's like, well, yeah, it's not altruistic, I guess. Um, but yeah, breaking is not prevalent in Korea. I don't know if it has anything to do with like the gambling laws. I know in Korea, for instance, when I went there, and I knew this before that when I went 2 years ago, but only foreigners with like foreign passports can go to the casinos in Korea.
Oh,
Like there
really?
are Korean citizens who work at the casinos, but Korean citizens are not allowed to go into their own casinos because it's like the government's like, yeah, we'll monetize the money off people who are traveling here, but
Yeah.
we think gambling is bad and you all should not do it. But of course in America, we, from a puritanical standpoint, we thought gambling was complete evil, and now it's like it's on your phone.
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. No, it's that's interesting to hear. I didn't know that our conversation was going to go there, but yeah, it's but you know, like even when I think about not just Hobby Korea, but like Beijing cards and just you know, it's just
Card
awesome to
Hobby,
yes,
Card Hobby official has like some of the
right,
biggest insane cards.
yeah,
And I know some people who use that app, and they were like, I don't want to share. This is like the hidden secret. But
yeah,
then word got out more. But like it's insane. It's cards you do not see in the U.S. It's like cards you see at the National.
right,
Just insane cards, and it's like the app is so hard to use. I tried to download it. I try to use it. Part of it
right.
is in Chinese, where I'm like, what did I just agree? What are the terms and conditions? I don't even know what it says. But I'm like, I want to bid on these cards.
Oh man, I'm too afraid to open it to tell you the truth, but I'm glad.
Oh yeah, it's what just got downloaded on my phone. Yeah, what's is there spying? Oh, of course, there's
Yeah,
also xenophobia when it comes to the whole like TikTok and
right, right. I was
yeah,
gonna
all that
say,
stuff. No, but this is what happens when you have me on, or like I love going down the rabbit holes and tangents. Like
yeah.
we had no idea we were gonna go down this way, but I love it.
You know
I
what I knew
mean,
for sure? I knew for sure that we wouldn't have a shortage of things to talk about. You know, I knew that this was going to be, you know, realistically, we were actually before this podcast, we were talking about like how long was it going to be? I'm like, you know, it could be 30 to 45 minutes.
we're over the
Thinking,
hour mark. I feel like we've been talking for like 15 minutes.
this, this is what happens. This is what happens. And that's on a kind of a tangent, brief tangent.
Yeah.
When we talked about you and Will having a podcast together, that's another reason why you remind me of Will. Every time he's a guest on the show,
Yeah.
it's going to be at least an hour long because we go on
Yeah. Yeah.
these crazy
Right, because he's
tangents.
like going on these. He cracks me up. He's a like a good storyteller.
Yes, he is. He
Yeah,
is.
we should finalize. We should just get down on paper or like a cocktail napkin how a Will and Denny podcast collab could work. It would be a spin-off. We would be under the umbrella of Five Card Guys.
Okay,
You
it
know, it
doesn't
would
have
be
to
the
be,
cards.
but
Yeah, cards to the moon. Like
yeah.
we could be cards to the Saturn or something. I don't know.
Whatever we can do to help, I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
you did mention it's over an hour mark, so let's look toward the end of this. And you know
Yes.
what, I thought what might be appropriate to end this is to kind of look towards the future, and we kind of teased it already. We're both going to be at Fanatics Fest.
Yes. Yes.
It's not going to be exactly like the national, of course, but what are you looking forward to heading into Fanatics Fest in a few weeks?
So I don't know if people know this. I just recently found out, and it was through some content that I was consuming on Instagram. But apparently, there's gonna be some like skills competitions. I think Michael Rubin, he did an interview with someone where he was like, "We're gonna take the best of these different events,
Mm-hmm.
entrance into a wrestling arena, the 40-yard dash, the I don't know, the long jump, whatever. Like there's gonna be like athletic competitions or have people feel like they're like the athlete, which
Okay.
to me sounds really fun and cool.
Yeah.
And then I think about my middle-aged bones and ligaments and
Yeah.
joints and thinking how bad would I pull my hamstring if I really try to run 40 yards because
Right.
I haven't done that in a very long time.
Uh-huh.
Uh, where I think people are going to be tested. That's not the thing that I'm most looking forward to, but it's something that was revealed to me where I'm like, oh man, I got to work out more. I've been trying to get in shape. When I was
Yeah,
taking a
yeah.
break from the hobby, I was like happy and healthy. I'm like, why am I coming back into the hobby? This is crazy. But that's gonna be fun. I think that's gonna be fun. And it would be fun to try to be like working with Fanatics in some official capacity, whether it's ambassador or some behind the scenes type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But even if that doesn't happen, I'm definitely coming. I miss my hobby family and community at the National in Cleveland, so I want to see everyone,
Same.
and I just want to have a great time. The cards, it's really interesting. I'm really gonna be interested to see how they pull it off. Like, how separate is this card section going to be? Is it going to be prominently in the middle of things?
Good
Is it
question.
going to be in the periphery? Is it going to be on a different floor?
Yeah.
Because when you have panels and discussions and stages, all the eyeballs are going to be towards Tom Brady, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well,
Right.
hey, I got Tom Brady cards. Who wants them, right? And what regular schmo off the street is like, oh yeah, you got a Brady rookie. I got 10 grand for that.
Yeah.
Like, do I even know what grading is? Do I even know, PSA, BGS, all that stuff? Like, I don't know how much money it's going to transact, but I know that if there's a large group of us, meaning the hobby community there to support each other and support the dealers, that deals will be made. We all know that so long as the bat signal goes up and we all flock to one place,
Yeah.
trade nights can happen in the hotel room, on the street,
Yeah.
on the hotel floor lobby and all that. So we're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
I'll definitely bring cards to kind of trade with people and do some buy sell trade.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm most looking forward to is the thing that I missed at the National, which is meeting all of you. Like, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. I echo all those thoughts. Especially meeting people in person rather than just on StreamYard or on our IG DMs. So that's going to
Yeah.
be the most exciting for me personally. I was talking to Daryl, and he's going to be there in New York as well, so
Nice.
you'll see
Good.
him. So we'll definitely all meet up together, and he's going to be there, as a um, buying and selling and dealing, of
Oh,
course, and
absolutely.
trading, and yeah. Oh, you're going to say something?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I just remembered.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to. Yeah, I'm gonna get him. He wants a hat. He wants
Okay.
a Fanatics. What is it called? The Lids Tops hat.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, He wanted me to ship one to him, and then I have one. I was gonna
Okay.
say, it's not going to be cheap. No, I'm gonna gift it to him. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not about the money. Look,
There you
I'm just
go.
saying it out loud, Daryl. So long as I remember, and you can definitely DM me to remind me. But I'm gonna get you a hat. One of the lids. It's gonna say DC, just like Daryl Chan, just like Denny
Right, right. Oh,
Cards.
that's what I want.
DC. Yeah, yeah. I was like, what?
I
Why?
get
Who
it
do you
now.
like in the Nationals? Like, what? You
Like, what?
you
What are you guys doing?
yeah, no, but yeah, he's a foodie. I've seen
Yes,
his
he is.
Instagram where he's just like posting all this street food and dining experiences, and I'm like, this guy likes to eat, and I'm all about having a good meal and with good friends. So
Oh, dude,
we're gonna
that's
have an
good.
absolute great time, and
Yeah.
just I just want my calendar like I want it to be packed in the sense of like I want it to be there to be unstructured time and like random things happening,
Hmm.
but I really want to make the most of my time
Me too.
is the way to put it, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I was telling DC that where I was going with it is that, he's going to be there for that. And I told him, like I just mentioned on this pod episode, I don't have many cards to deal. So I'm going to hopefully look to buy a few things
Yeah.
if I can. But I'm really there to, make content, of course, for the
Yeah.
pod and just for podcast. But I feel like part of the content is going to be coinciding with meeting up with people. It's just,
Oh yeah.
talking about cards in general, and like also this being not purely a sports card conference because there's going to be sports fans there.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to just seeing that interaction with just people that are completely even oblivious to the hobby, but they're coming and they see a bunch of us around, and I hope they see that, not to be cliche, that fanaticism of sports cards that we have kind of rub off onto them, and then maybe we can have those kind of discussions. That'll be interesting to have
Yeah.
with people that are just there to see Brady or Kevin Durant or just basketball or football fans. Maybe this is their intro to the hobby, which would be great to
Right.
see.
It's such a beaten down joke, but I want to mention it. Like, I wonder how much those folks who are not in the hobby are going to look at us or smell us and go, "Oh, these guys smell terrible." Is it just sports fans in general? Because I made a joke about how look straight up Asian Americans, we don't have a lot of hair in our body, so we don't smell as much.
Yep,
So
true.
I just feel like there are some people who are like, oh, you gotta deodorant. I made the joke about how it's not the bo, it's the flatulence. But
Right.
I it makes me wonder like, oh, and also someone made a really great comment. He's like, why their line to the bathroom is so long. How
Yeah.
can I go and make deals? One thing has to give. And I'm like, all right, you make a good point. You can't
Yeah,
go to the bathroom then. The bathrooms in Rosemont, no lines. I mean, I remember it
oh
was
yeah,
like
okay.
near the Beckett area. The entire weekend, it was like it was very well equipped to handle the capacity, I would say.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, are we going to go as a hobby community and go, wow, like, look at these, look, they look just like us. It's just that they don't have cards. They don't have cards. They don't have
Yeah.
the cases in their hands and the slabs, but they're just as slovenly as us.
But yeah, I feel like, I'm speaking for myself. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like, we're sports card fanatics, but I'm a sports fanatics as well. Like it's
Hmm.
more likely
Yeah.
that we're both, if you're a sports card collector. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're just a sports fan, you might not be a sports card collector yet, right? So
Right. No, and I know we got to end soon, but I do want to just kind of take this a little bit further to be like, I just submitted out to grading with PSA like a value bulk 20 card minimum,
mhm,
and there is something about how you really do sit at your table for a long time.
mhm,
Like yes, you can watch TV on the couch and this and that, or I try like right now I'm standing while I'm doing this podcast, and I have like a stand razor thing.
yeah,
But when I'm like looking at my cards, or I'm comping things out, or I'm just kind of like doing things in the hobby, I'm just like sitting in a chair and I'm being completely sedentary and
right,
inactive. And I feel like so many of us, unless you're the type to like only look at eBay when you're on a treadmill, or you're only listening to hobby podcasts while you're running, whatever it is,
yeah.
I feel like for the most part, we really are just like, uh, that dude who owns that comic book store in The Simpsons. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. That's good visualization.
yeah.
All right. Well, how about we end off with this? Because you've been to the national, you've been to big shows, and this will be helpful for me.
Yeah.
Besides wearing comfortable shoes, besides wearing deodorant, especially if you're not Asian, any tips, in terms of preparing for a show like Fanatics Fest? That'd be
Man, I was gonna make this content about tips to the national, but it was gonna be all jokey and goofy and
okay.
and not real. One of them was gonna be um, just shave all your body hair and become Asian, so you don't have the BO issue. I realized I couldn't make that happen. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, actually, show my like. It was just a
right,
bad
right.
idea to try to make into short form real content.
Uh,
Um, but no, I would say a lot of people do. It's really hard, right? We know that Wi-Fi and cell connectivity can be an issue, and yet everyone's like, you got to be ready for it, or you better know the prices of your cards. That's great. Certainly know the prices, know what your lowest is for your own cards and all
yeah.
that. But how are you supposed to know the prices of the cards you want to get, right? Like you have to
hmm
comp them in person.
Yep.
And so that's really hard to navigate. I don't know how to try to, what the solution is for that, but that's like a problem that waits to be try to be fixed. The comfortable shoes thing, like what, like where depends, like walk around in an adult diaper so you don't have to go to the restroom. Like, is that a good tip? It's like silly and terrible.
yeah.
Um, I feel that
How much cash
I
should
don't
I bring?
know, just oh gosh, well, that's a whole nother that once we talk about things like that, people tighten up a little, right? They're like, oh, don't talk about the actual
right.
dollars and money. Um, have your dream think about like a top 5 or top 10 want list or whatever it is,
Okay. Yeah.
and just think about how much maybe 2 or 3, again, I don't know where in the top 2 most expensive or bottom
Mm,
2 most expensive, but just some average,
yeah.
and try to have maybe half of that in money and half of that in trade
Right.
value.
That's good
People,
advice. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the good dealers know how to accept PayPal and Venmo. I mean, they're not going to say no to money. People just like cash in general because it's traceless.
Yeah.
But in general, like I made, I paid people at the local car show that I was dealing at in Venmo, and they
hmm
accepted it because they know that it's just as good as regular cash. So um, I would say definitely personal. I can't speak to that. That's too hard. That's a
Okay.
trick
Okay.
question.
Okay. Let me ask you this then. Venmo and PayPal, like Venmo's not a big thing here in Canada. So
Oh,
PayPal, is that or do most people have Venmo? Should I set up a Venmo account? What's going on?
most people, I would say, I more people that I know in the hobby, and I don't know if it's like a regional local DC thing, but I know so many more people who do Venmo than PayPal.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
So I would, again, I don't know, there might be some New Yorkers screaming while listening to this being like, no, we use Stripe and we use
Oh, Stripe.
Coinbase for
Yeah.
crypto and all this stuff. I don't know, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
But Venmo is pretty popular.
Okay. Good to
Setting it
know.
up, I don't know what the rules are with the whole currency stuff, um, international transactions. But I would encourage you to just be. It seems like you're ready, like you're liquid, you're ready to do it.
Yeah.
You have a good idea of what you want to do. You have your lodging set up. You have your flights set up. It seems like you're ready. It's just these next 2-3 weeks are gonna fly by. I mean, it's
Yeah.
we're gonna be hanging out before you know it, I think.
Nice. Nice. I can't wait. And maybe that's a great way to end. I
Yes.
just um, ordered some stickers of Cars to the Moon stickers. So I'll give you one, Denny, when we
Oh,
see.
should I do
Uh,
that? I still don't have any. I don't have any stickers.
well, neither do we. We just did it just right now. So just in preparation for the Fanatics
Okay,
Fest to hand
okay.
out.
Yeah, I'm like a terrible content creator, influencer, whatever. Like I don't have a custom mat. I don't have stickers. The only custom thing that I put with Denny cards is literally like some onesies that I gave to some people in the hobby who had babies and like my neighbor.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then, well, I won't get into all that stuff, but
Yeah.
um, I don't have stickers, but offline we'll talk about where you get your stickers.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have Vista print, but but that's where I got mine. But
Okay, yeah.
yeah, there you go. All right,
Okay,
Denny,
awesome.
thank you for coming on
Thank
our
you.
podcast today.
Yes, our product. Yeah, thank you, Clark, for having me, and thank you for being on ours. It was a
been a blast.
duality of a pleasure.
Yes, agreed, agreed. And I'm sure this won't be the last. We'll do something in New York for sure.
Oh, we're gonna cut some
Lots,
fun
yes.
content.
Yeah, we're gonna be laughing a lot for sure.
Yeah, we're
And
gonna see how red we get when we drink, I think.
the Asian flush, yes,
Yes,
yes.
exactly.
You're gonna see it for sure. And anyone else that's going to FanFest, please DM us. Please, I'm sure it goes the same with Denny. We'd love to meet you guys there and just catch up. And yeah,
Do
it's great
not
to.
DM me. Do
Okay,
not DM.
don't DM Denny, but you can
Yeah,
DM
please.
me at Five Card Guys, and I'll make the necessary arrangements.
Yes,
All right,
thank you.
we'll see you guys
This
soon.
was fun, Clark. Thank you so much for having me, or
Thank
us,
you.
and all that.
Yes, yes, likewise.